ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another thing where I talk about things. Today, I would like to talk about Zootopia again. I actually saw the movie, so I thought I would follow up and talk about the differences between what I thought the movie would be about and what it actually turned out to be about. It is true that, that some of the things I predicted did not occur. Some things did, but for the most part, I was completely wrong. Although, we'll get into that. Anyway, though, first thing that I want to talk about, because Alan and I were kind of joking about this, is that Shakira actually features in this movie as Gazelle. And we were joking about this because Shakira is so hopelessly out of place in this movie. Like, she's playing this character Gazelle, and she has a couple of scenes. Like, the first thing she does is she's got this song, Try Everything, you know, oh, try everything. And it sort of fits the theme of the movie a little bit. Essentially, the movie is about this little rabbit that decides she's going to be a cop, so she devotes her entire life to working on becoming this cop. And then finally, she makes it as a cop because she really wants it. She really worked for it. You know, she's been doing it since she was a little kid. And, you know, that's reasonable. She spent her entire life fighting the odds, trying to get to where she's going to go. And the irony about the Try Everything song versus this rabbit spending her entire life, like, laser focused on a single goal, was that Judy Hopps, the main character from the movie, was laser focused on a single goal, and rather than trying everything and going with what she was best suited for, she tried one thing and never stopped trying that one thing. Like, she devoted her whole life to that one thing. So, really the song should have been, try one single thing and never deviate from that path no matter what anyone tells you. Because goddammit, you're gonna be a cop if you want to be a cop. So that right there, it was almost a fitting song, but didn't quite fit what was going on. And then later she had a scene, and it was really cheesy, it was really schmaltzy, where Shakira is like talking into the microphone, and she's like, I love Zootopia. There's a bad thing going on, but I want to petition everyone for love and like for hugging. And like, but just like platonic hugging, like everyone who's coming to me for hugs, you know, if you could stop groping, that would be great. You know, and it's just this like heartfelt like appeal. And it was like, like, what are you doing? Like, Shakira, get off the stage. Like, we're interested in these other two characters. Like, Shakira trying to steal the spotlight. It was just ridiculous. And then finally they have her closing out, and she's like singing a song, and everyone's at her concert, and everybody loves Gazelle. Everybody loves Shakira. And there were a couple of funny things about the Gazelle character. One of them was that Shakira specifically asked for the character's hips to be wider, because Shakira's hips, they either don't lie or they can't lie. I'm not sure if they have a debilitating problem where they're incapable of lying, and you know, therefore they can just never lie. You can always trust them. Or if they don't lie as a matter of principle, like her hips are just very honest, but they could lie if they wanted to. Like, there's a certain amount of deviousness if need be. I'm pretty sure that it's the latter. I'm pretty sure that her hips could lie, but just on general principle, they tend not to. So, so Shakira was like, yeah, make the hips wider. And then she touted that as, like, body positivity, which cracks me up. Like, because that's sort of, like, that's when you get in that kind of, for a while, like, everyone was so uptight about body positivity on the internet. And I knew, like, the rhetoric that people apply behind those sorts of moral arguments, they're always so flimsy, because you come out and you've got like this sort of new argument, and it might be based on something. It might have some kind of basis somewhere. Like for example, if you want to get into body positivity, like you say, like suppose someone gets in a car accident and they get messed up and they have a bunch of scars, they don't feel good. So you get behind them, you be like, you still look good, like you've still got your health, like I'm glad that you survived the car crash. Be positive, body positive, like feel good about who you are. That sort of thing. So that has like a good strong like kind of motivator behind it. But then later you got into more and more, it got weirder and more extreme, where it was like, yeah, like, I mean, like you have diabetes, and like your eating habits are like clinically unhealthy, like they're objectively bad for you. And then they would say, but like body positivity, yeah, feel good about the fact that you're gonna have your foot amputated, and people would get all uppity about that. Like there's a limit. Like there's points where it's good and there's points where it's bad. Just like with everything, too much of one thing is always is bad. You can always have too much. You can have too much body positivity. But that rhetoric got so very popular that eventually, finally, we get back to Shakira, and Shakira is sitting there saying, like, yeah, like I need her to have wide hips. because that's body positivity. Like, it makes me feel positive about my body. So if we make this character have wide hips, then I'm promoting body positivity because I feel really positive about this. And like, you can't really argue with that because like, what right does Shakira not have to feel positive about her body? Like, what are you gonna do? Like, she'll be like, no, Shakira, you should feel bad about your hips. Like, yeah, I mean, like, all right, yeah, body positivity, sure. Same with like, oh, like if you had giant tits, like you should feel positive about having giant tits. That's body positivity. Everything, like, I don't know, it's just silly. So Shakira, weird and out of place. We talked about this after the movie. Like, how did Shakira get involved in this film? Like, was she doing promotion for it? Like, Shakira hasn't really been big for a while. So, like, why was Shakira in the film? I don't know. I don't understand. Like, why did she get control over what the Gazelle looked like? Why did she have her own little scene where she was like, yes, I am Gazelle. I am the important character Gazelle. And also, why was her name Gazelle? Like Judy Hopps wasn't named Rabbit. Judy Hopps was named Judy. So that's like if you were named Human. Like you're a famous musician and you just named yourself Human. Like, hi, I'm Human. Sort of weird. But that's Shakira. That's not the actual main plot of the movie. The plot of the movie itself, it was pretty. I don't know. I couldn't really say a whole lot about it. It was very straightforward, very simple. And some people argue that this is actually a good hallmark for writing, as they say that you shouldn't write more complicated than an 8th grader could understand. And I will say, not to discredit the movie, but the plot was very simple, very straightforward, definitely within that range. An 8th grader could understand it. But what was charming about it really wasn't the overall story, like the overarching story. There wasn't really a whole lot of suspense there. What was great is that the characters were really good. Like, the characters felt very clever. They had a lot of witty dialogue and back and forth, and they were constantly kind of outsmarting each other, fox in the hair kind of thing. And so that was very charming. That was actually very nice. So the character writing was really good. The plot itself kind of it didn't really hinge around a core conflict too seriously. Like, they sort of did. The first thing is just that, like, Judy's like, I'm gonna be a cop. And then she gets to be a cop, and the cops don't take her seriously. And then she's like, well, I'm going to be taken serious by the cops. And the cops give her a really hard job. And they say, if you don't solve this thing, then you have to resign, because Rabbit shouldn't be in the force. And so she just, she's going to solve this thing. And it turns out that the animals are going feral. And so Judy then figures out that the mayor was hiding that they were going feral. And then it turns out that the whole reason why animals were going feral, and spoilers, I guess, is that there's this, like, common plant that people just, like, grow. Like, you can actually just go down to the store and you can just buy these plants. And these plants release a spore or something like that makes animals go crazy. And so, that's what's doing it. And it's really weird, because if it's a common plant that people just grow, like, Judy's parents were aware that this plant made animals go crazy. And everybody was baffled, because they were like, oh man, why are these animals going crazy? And then, like, at one point, her parents were just like, yeah, that blue flower, like, that's driving everybody insane. And it's kind of like, I mean, like, you just know that this is just common knowledge, like this flower. Why is this blindsiding everybody? So that was a little bit weird. That was kind of like a huge plot hole. But like I say, the movie really didn't have its charm from the plot itself. It was really, the character stuff was really kind of what was interesting about it. That and the animation was really solid. You have to admit, when you watch the thing, you'll probably see, like, Judy's got a lot of bounce to her. She's very expressive. There's lots of movements. Like, the facial stuff is really good. One thing that we actually sat and we watched, we actually would look at it and then we would rewind it and then look at it again to kind of learn. We're kind of interested in learning what they did when they animated this, is the sloth. When they talk to the sloth, they have this really interesting thing where they tell the sloth a joke, and this was actually in the advertisements. And the joke hits him, and then there's a brief look of surprise, and then he starts to smile. And we were talking about this, how they probably recorded somebody, like they told them a joke, and the person laughs, and then they, like they probably recorded someone and slowed it down and actually just animated this character to have that expression. And so we were talking about how you kind of have, like, you have a second where things sink in, like they tell you the joke, the character stops for like a second, like you process it with your forebrain, and then, like, your face then your face sort of catches up. And so we're talking about, like, character acting and things like that, and how in our own stuff, like, for example, in Mass, the character should probably be registering, like when somebody says something stupid, like if I have Rainbow Dash say something stupid, there should probably be like a little tick where the other characters like stop and think about it, and then they react, like, because they've got to process this stupid thing that Dash just said, because everything she says is so stupid. So so that particular amount of animation was really good. I say the facial stuff was really good, and they played to the character tropes really well. Like Judy would, I guess with the fox and the hare thing, like the fox is always depicted as clever, and so little fox character, he was an interesting and clever guy. Like I kind of liked the angle that they went with him. Is he got roped in with Judy. Originally, I assumed that he was going to be trying to talk himself out of a crime, and it turns out that this is actually the way that they went, because that's the very fox and the hare sort of thing to do. I thought parking ticket or something like that, like he was driving around on a motorcycle, and he was also going to have family who roped him into like poor stuff. But it turns out that what it really was is that he was evading taxes, and he sort of talked himself into this one, and this was a little bit funny because they kept using this tape recorder to nail people on crimes. Like somebody would confess a crime, and then Judy would have this tape recorder, and it would be like, "Ha! I got your voice on tape, and now you will be implicated in this crime." And I recall hearing somewhere that is actually like illegal. Like there's certain legal things that you have to do to make that sort of evidence permissible in court, and if you just record someone talking about a crime and they don't know you're recording, there's a certain I don't know, there's rules about that. Like I think you can't just do that. I mean, like I know that you have people like they'll wear a wire or whatever, but I think that that's all part of case building. Like you can't build an entire case around a single recording of somebody confessing to a crime. But anyway, though, Nick the fox, he explains that he's been doing this thing where he like buys popsicles, and then he like resells these popsicles at much inflated prices, and he's been making all this money for all this time, and he's never paid taxes on it because it's all in cash. And so Judy's like, "Oh well, I'll arrest you for not paying taxes," even though I don't think this is actually a police thing. That was another thing that I thought was a little funny. Is like I say, the core writing, 8th grade level, like definitely one of those things, like if you really get into taxes and law and politics, a lot of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's easy to follow, like it all has a nice logical progression, and that's all solid. Like it doesn't hurt the story, but knowing that some of the stuff is wrong is a little weird because it kind of throws me. Like it's just sort of like, oh, that's not how that works. But anyway, though, Judy threatens to arrest him for not paying his taxes, even though I think that's an IRS thing. I mean, she could just report him, I suppose, and then they would. I think that's like I think that'd be an FBI thing. Maybe. I mean, it's certainly not a local police deal. I don't know. Maybe Zootopia has a different legal system. I'm not sure how exactly it would work. But anyway, though, she threatens to arrest Nick, and she winds up stringing him along on this whole journey to try and figure out what happened to this otter that disappeared. And eventually it turns out that she bounces around, and talking to this crime boss is part of her investigation, as she thinks that this crime boss abducted the otter. And it turns out that no, the otter was just friends with the crime boss, and it was all kind of for a gag. Actually, it was a Godfather gag. And again, this is another one of these things where it's like it's not a really strong. This is not a really strong story arc, but the characters were cute. Like the shrew was cute. Like they have this little shrew, and he's a crime boss, and so he's just kind of cute. He's got his daughter. They do the whole Godfather bit. They've got all the giant polar bears that come out, and the whole thing is kind of just a big setup for a joke, but still rather charming. And Judy it turns out that, due to a previous scene, like I say, it's not bad writing. There's a previous scene where Judy is chasing a bunch of people through a rodent town, and she saves a little shrew from like a giant donut. Like there's this donut that falls down, it's going to crush the shrew. It's a little shrew lady, and Judy saves her. And so this actually comes back when she goes and she sees the crime boss from that scene in the movie. The little girl comes out and she's like, "Oh, it's my wedding. Like you're not going to ice anyone on the wedding, as Daddy has to." And then the little shrew girl goes, "Oh, hey, that's Judy. That's that rabbit that saved me down in Rodent Town." So they have kind of the setups and whatnot. And in fact, even with the flower thing, which I thought was a bit of a plot hole, they had a sort of a setup with that, where they have a weasel who steals a bunch of flower bulbs, and then he he gets caught, and they berate Judy for it, because they're like, oh, way to go, you chased this guy through Rodent Town, but all he had was flower bulbs. Are you dumb? And I kind of knew that those flower bulbs were going to come back, because that's such a weird thing. Like, that's such an unusual thing to be stealing, and to devote an entire scene to chasing down a criminal who was stealing flower bulbs. Like, it's just that's like a Chekhov's gun sort of thing. Like, okay, clearly the flower bulbs are going to be important later, and sure enough, yeah, they were a central part of the plot. But the shrew that gets saved, though, that was actually very clever, because the shrew gets saved in the midst of a bunch of chaos, and Judy's just kind of, they're just like, oh, thank you, and Judy's like, yeah, don't mention it, and she just runs off. So that one kind of flipped by you, and then when the shrew comes out, and they're like, oh, that's the rabbit that saved me. And they're like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that did happen. That scene did happen. So that was a good setup. That was a good little bit of writing there for the character to later come out, and then they get their butts saved. So you got your Godfather's reference, and then the other thing. And so then the shrew agrees to help Judy find her suspect. And so the shrew, it turns out, actually had no involvement whatsoever in the plot. For the most part, it was just a joke setup. What they then do is they go and they find like a limo driver, and then the limo driver turns feral and tries to murder them. And that's like the first time that you actually see a character go feral and try to kill somebody. Again, why he went feral at that particular time, or why any of the characters really went feral at the times that they did, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, everyone who you see on screen go feral, they do so in a very mysterious and unexpected way. And it's because the reason that they... Like essentially someone is purposefully making the animals go feral. But their target selection process is completely arbitrary and only suitable for dramatic tension in the movie. It's another part of the plot holes, where you're just like, yeah, I did that, and it's like, well, why did you do it then? Like you set up this suspense. Like, for example, they find the otter, and they find the limousine that the otter was in. This is why they go talk to this limo driver, and there's scratch marks all over the limousine. And they're like, oh man, this otter must have gotten roughed up. And it turns out that the otter went crazy in the limo. So, the guy is talking, the Jaguar is talking, and he's like, oh, yeah, no, that otter went crazy. He went crazy. He took my eye, and da-da-da. And he's just talking about this. And when you later find out that someone is inducing the animals to go crazy, it doesn't make any sense, because what happens is this guy gets hit with this stuff, this flower, essentially, and it makes him go crazy, in the limo. But then you have to wonder, why are they setting up this... if they'd planted it, if it'd been a bomb that they'd planted in a limo because they didn't like somebody or something like that, it would have made sense. But it turns out that it was just a random act of, we just chose this otter, and then we shot him. We shot him with a pellet that made him go crazy. And it was yeah, but he was in a moving car, traveling down the highway. How did you know that this otter was going to have the windows rolled down, would be traveling down the highway and everything else? It felt like they had... I don't know, they hadn't really set that up, or it didn't really make a lot of sense. It was super implausible. And yet they just kind of needed to... They needed to connect everything back to a central villain, was the thing. Is it felt like... You didn't really see there was a final villain for the movie for them to defeat and close everything on, to say oh, here's our closure, we defeated the big final villain. But it feels like the final villain of that thing, they didn't really build around her so much as they just sort of almost retconned her into the entire plot. Everything building up to that didn't really imply that there was someone specifically behind it. It implied that there was something in the air, or maybe somebody was eating something, or something was happening. There was no way that there was somebody sitting around with a rifle just shooting people with darts. It was completely unfeasible that was what was going on, but that turned out to be what was going on. Somebody was actually just shooting animals with darts that made them go crazy. So yes, yeah. Like I say, not super well written, but fun, great character writing, really well animated. Very attractive, lots of crowds, good movie overall. Had some weaknesses, but not weaknesses that I think drag the movie down. The plot holes and the inconsistencies in the writing, I don't think messed with it too bad. But overall, pretty good. The entire thing was about sort of defying stereotypes, which, you know, it's sort of tired, but it was a little bit weird, because in spite of the fact that the movie was about defying stereotypes, it was like, you know, a fox, just because a fox is a predator doesn't mean that he's a bad person. Ironically, Nick still acted like a fox throughout the entire movie. Like, he never really got away from that character trope. Like, he was the clever fox throughout the entire movie. And Judy Hopps too. She was well, she was a rabbit. I guess there's not really a very strict thing for the rabbit. Like, I thought she was gonna fall in love with the fox, because rabbits are known mostly for their romantic efforts, I suppose. Judy, maybe you couldn't really define her so well with a single, you know, like animal fable trope. But she was the main character, so she got the most amount of development. We got to see her a lot. Truth was, virtually everybody behaved kind of like their general animal behaviors. So for whatever stereotyping you could do, like the characters, you know, broke out of their stereotypes from time to time, but for the most part, they followed along those animal stereotypes, which I think is the way to go, because if you're going to do animal stuff, the idea is that you use the personalities that people associate with the animals to establish your characters. So, like, you know that Nick is a fox, so you expect that Nick is supposed to be clever, and the audience is on the same page as you, and you just kind of roll with them, you move with it. In terms of writing, that's generally the way that you want to go. If you try to be really defiant of one of those stereotypes, if you say, like, yeah, here's Nick, but he's actually got a heart of gold, and he's really honest, and he's never done anything wrong in his life, you're kind of going against the grain of a stereotype, and you can establish that, but you still have to sort of set up the stereotype for the audience and then defy it so they know where you're going. Like, you have to get the audience on the same page as you. So in terms of writing, like, stereotypes are really useful. The show was about sort of defying stereotypes, but you need to use them when you write, because you've only got so long to get people acquainted with your characters and get them to understand, like, this is what we're doing, and this is who they are. So it was more about defying the stereotype of predators versus prey than it was about defying, like, species stereotypes, things like that. The species all behaved like their species, but their general sort of designation with relationship to each other was not changed. I mean, I guess you could argue that technically everybody looked at Judy and they were like, oh, you're a rabbit, you're never going to make it as a cop because you're too small. But eventually they came around to it and they were like, yeah, Judy, because you're smart and you solved a case. You solved a big case. They actually liked her. One of the things they established that was kind of terrible was that a lot of people liked her because she was a tiny little prey animal, and there were lots of tiny little prey animals in Zootopia, so they actually all looked up to her. And so she wound up being sort of like a PR face for the whole thing. And she had a little bit of moral dilemma about that in the movie, because it wasn't really what she was going for. She wanted to be a good cop, not really like a figurehead for cops. You know, not necessarily being a good cop, but just being like, yeah, this is a cop that looks good politically. I don't know. There were a couple of I don't know, whatever. You could say a couple of things. You could sort of analyze what they were trying to say and what they were trying to do with Zootopia. But I think that where it really shines, though, is not really any of the deeper messages or any of the implications. Like, a lot of people really wanted to hinge onto the racial stuff and the stereotyping stuff, because that's all kind of like low-hanging fruit. That's like controversy. That's like saying, like, oh yeah, no, like, let me tell you about society. But the truth is, probably the more technical stuff is what was really, really good about Zootopia. The animation was really good. The set design was really good. In fact, one thing that I really liked about the movie is they had all these different sets that you go to. Like, you know, they've got like the rainforest land and the tundra land, you know, and then there's the temperate climates and so on and so forth. So they've got all these different climates in Zootopia, and it allowed them to bounce around and go to these different interesting sets. You know, it all kind of made sense within their setting. So character writing, animation, character acting, set design, like a lot of stuff was really good. A lot of it is kind of more technical and probably would be more interesting. If you really wanted to break it down, it would be more interesting to film buffs, animation buffs, people like that, who really care about those kind of technical details. But I think personally, the writing itself, you know, fairly mediocre writing, good character writing, mediocre overall story. Still a lot of fun. Still do recommend. I spoiled a bit of stuff there, but like I say, honestly, in my opinion, most of the charm comes from watching the characters, the jokes, just the visuals. Like the plot wouldn't hold up by itself, but with all the stuff going into it, like with all the ability that actually went into that film, I would say it is a great film, regardless of whether or not the writing was a little meh. So yeah. Anyway, that's my take on it. It was a good movie. It was good fun. Had a good time watching it. So I suppose that'll be it for today. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I will catch you all next time.